2:37. Average American in for the Great American. How are you on this Monday? The House impeachment, well, that's now the Senate. What am I saying, the House? The impeachment trial of the Senate continues on. Apparently, John Bolton has a manuscript that claims that there was quid pro quo when it came to aid for the Ukraine and whether or not Donald Trump was going to release it unless there was some investigation of Joe Biden and his son Hunter. So is this the smoking gun that the Democrats have been looking for so long? I mean, I don't know. It's hard to tell because nobody's heard from John Bolton yet and nobody's seen a book yet, but there's a manuscript out that somehow majestically got dropped in the New York Times lap last night. Politics continue to run the roost. Standing by is somebody that knows all about this and much, much more. He is the head of the Department of Government, Legal Studies, and Philosophy at Tarleton State University. He is Dr. Nathaniel Cogley. And Dr. Cogley, how are you on this Monday?
I'm all right. How you doing, Ken?
I'm doing well. It always amazes me, and I guess it's the art of the politics, that just when it looks like all things are bleak, bang, here comes another smoking gun, and it's either the Washington Post or the New York Times that releases these things. I just wonder, we don't know what's in this manuscript. We only know what the New York Times has published from what was leaked to them, but it just seems like when things are going wrong, all of a sudden there's something that's dropped on the president and what he might have and might not have done. I'm amazed by that, aren't you?
Well, I think you're correct to be suspicious at the timing. As you know, we had that GAO decision on the day the trial started. And one thing I've noticed in the House manager's case is they were not playing to the Senate. You know, these are actual politicians who have a home district to play to. And they were saying things that aren't designed to win over senators' votes, but are designed basically to script the narrative for when they lose the trial. So Nadler was saying, if you senators don't call the witnesses we want, including Bolton, then you're complicit in the cover-up. Schiff said the House is going to present their case, and then the president's attorneys will present their case. Then you'll be able to ask 2 days of questioning, and then the trial will begin. That's how he phrased it. In other words, if we don't have witnesses, there is no trial. Yeah. And so once again, the timing here is trying to make the case that, Bolton, needs to testify for this to be a legitimate trial. They've spun the narrative of the president and his motivations and what he's done, and now they're kind of spinning the narrative of this procedure. Just one thing, when I saw the New York Times and what they're saying, is there's some subtleties in here. So when it comes to the quote, you say that Bolton thinks Trump preferred sending no assistance to Ukraine until officials had turned over all materials they had about the Russia investigation. Remember, there's two different investigations, one into the Burisma that could involve the Bidens and one into the CrowdStrike server 2016. And a lot of the language here talks about the president investigating a Democrat political rival. All this applies to the CrowdStrike server 2016, i.e. Hillary Clinton 2016. And I'm just not sure John Bolton's so close, because we have an earlier quote from him that Fiona Hill said that he's not part of whatever drug deal Sondland and Mulvaney are cooking up, which even suggests in the way that he's been talking to people, he's not that close to any of these negotiations with Ukraine and any concerns they might have had about the security assistance.
Yeah, and again, when we get into conversations about the impeachment, those who think that Trump is guilty and needs to be removed, and you start saying something that might be in the president's defense, they're going to have their hair on their back up. And if you say something that might be something that affects the president's defense and his possibility of being impeached, well, that gets the hair of their backs up. So what I'm trying to navigate here is, I think that this is what's going on here is they're trying to, at this point, and politically, I'm not sure I wouldn't do the same thing. They're trying to get witnesses. They're trying to get people in there that weren't, for whatever reason, the House's inability or their inability to go to courts or whatever it might be. They're trying to get witnesses in there to prolong this narrative, because the longer they promote this narrative, the better it is for them being the Democrats. So I think what we saw from the Times last night and what was leaked, Doctor, and you're going to know far better than I think this is all aimed right now of getting witnesses in front of the Senate, don't you?
Well, that's one approach, that they're trying to get these witnesses. And, of course, if we go witnesses, President Trump will be able to have a number of people that maybe Democrats don't want on the stand. What I'm suggesting is that there's an ulterior motive here, which is not to actually get witnesses, but to claim that this trial is not legitimate without them. In other words, once the trial concludes, they're going to say, well, it wasn't legitimate. We didn't have the witnesses that we need to have. Ken, I think there are going to be some witnesses, and I can be totally wrong about this. Everything is a bit unprecedented. They're just not going to be the bombshell witnesses that people are imagining, like Hunter Biden and John Bolton. There's two levels to the case against the president. One is, did he do what they're alleging he did? But the other question is what they are alleging that he did even a crime that rises to treason, bribery, other high crimes or misdemeanors? In other words, should we even be here at all? Ken Starr was making that case similar to my last op-ed, that you should take the president to civil court, in U.S. District Civil Court in Washington, D.C. You shouldn't even be here. So I do think there's some moderate Republicans from swing districts. It's good for them to be patient. It might even be good for them to want a witness or two. It's just, I think it's going to end up being on the question of, is this even appropriate to be impeaching here? Is there even a crime involved, which is different than, did the president do what they're even alleging, which a Bolton witness would be connected to?
We're chatting with Dr. Nathaniel Cogley. We're talking about the impeachment hearings that continue on in the Senate as we speak at this hour. I have no idea what John Bolton's book is. It may very well be nothing more than just his opinion about something. I mean, that seems to be what has been the narrative from all of these witnesses in the House. It's, I heard this, or I suppose this, or this is what I think happened, but never anything that is a direct fact that leads anyone to a conclusion. We don't know where that is going with this, but this is obviously, and I think you're right, this is a narrative that's playing above the Senate to the general population to try and sully the president's reputation in the 2020 election. I think this is what the game is here, and whether or not they get him ousted, which I don't think they will, they can at least, as you say, raise the specter of it was not a fair trial. I just wonder if that narrative holds, if indeed there are witnesses who will deliver things, bombshell or otherwise. Would that narrative still hold, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, some senators have said, if there's something conclusive that comes out, but I just don't think there is. I mean, I've discussed how the president is allowed to make his decisions, and the idea that there's no national security interest in, suspicious activities in the previous years in Ukraine is quite contrary to what we would assume about the integrity of our foreign policy. I think you're right, Ken, to connect Bolton to some of the witnesses that were in the House testimony, like Sondland, who said, hey, I presumed this. I felt a strong presumption. So we do know that the president ended up having a very difficult relationship with Bolton, and the time frame here is near the end of Bolton's tenure. And so, Bolton may have presumed, assumed, thought, unhappy, and that might come out both in his manuscript and in a testimony that he had a presumption or something. But it's just not going to be a smoking gun, different than what we've already seen from someone like Sondland.
It's always great having you on, Doc. It really is. Appreciate it. I get a feeling that this is not going to end sooner. I think it's going to end later. I think you're right. We'll see some witnesses, which means it's going to drag on here for at least another couple of weeks. That's my gut feeling. I don't think it's going to be as cut and dry as maybe what Mitch McConnell thought it was going to be, but I got a sense we're probably going to be here again talking about this in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, you might be right. I do think there'll be a witness or two. And the Clinton trial lasted 5 weeks, so I know that McConnell's been trying to push it faster, but Clinton trial was over a month, and the Johnson trial was over 2 months, so we'll see how this one shapes out.
All right. Dr. Cogley, we appreciate your time. Thanks for your time here on 700 WLW.
Thanks so much, Ken.